Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday to you. We are here in beautiful Cabo San Lucas. I am your host, Hondo Carpenter of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast and your beat writer on SI covering the Las Vegas Raiders. Joined now by my dear friend who's not here in Cabo with me, and that Bob bugs me. I wish he was, but the one and only. He's a terrific journalist, very decorated. He is a highly respected attorney in the Atlanta Buckhead area of Georgia, and he joins us each and every Saturday to go around the world of the NFL, the great Jonathan Shop, or as you guys like to call him, Johnny Guitars. Johnny, how are you, bud?
I'm good. I'm here on the other side of the Gulf in the Miramar Beach area. So we're covering it from both ends this time.
I got to tell you, I don't know if you can see it because of the sunlight, but I got the Sea of Cortez behind me. You can hear the waves hitting the wall. Oh, it's great. All right, buddy. I want to talk about the new look Raiders. And I, there's something that's been overlooked in the Gino deal. So right now, the top quarterbacks are getting north of 50 million. Now, I don't think Gino is one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. I do think he's a top 15. Those guys are getting from mid to high 40s. So the Raiders go and they get a deal with him, and it's roughly 66 million guaranteed. With incentives, he can get it up to about 85. So if he performs at the level he thinks he can, he's still going to be a low 40s. And if he just performs okay, he's low 30s, and the Raiders bring stability to a position on a contract they can get out of. It's not long term. I mean, this was brilliant job of negotiating by the Raiders, and it just continues to hammer what we've thought that they are the new look Raiders are reshaping themselves and consequently the NFL. I'd love your thoughts.
Well, the first thing is it looks like a smart deal. So if you take the Raider logo and you put it aside and you evaluate it with Geno Smith going back to a coach that he's worked with, given where he is in his career, then you look at the numbers that's guaranteed, which are, of course, the most important. It starts to seem like it might make a little sense when you
Mhm.
combine that with really the cost for the Raiders is not too high. They could have a really big benefit relative to their cost. This looks like a smart deal. Sometimes in the past, the Raiders have done some things that people would not classify as smart deals. There's a really good chance that this one goes down as a smart deal because, like you talked about weeks back, they were going to get another deal, but it was also going to leave them room to get out relatively easily and painlessly. And I'm not sure it does anything to affect their possibility of drafting a quarterback this year if there's one that they really like, or already in their mind with kind of set up what's going to be teed up to maybe pick a successor in the next draft or two. So when you talk about the number one position of need in the sport, the number one position of need on this team, it does seem like they accomplished a good bit. And for whatever reason, there's a lot of guys around the sport that have always been pulling for Geno Smith. There's guys in New York, there's guys in Seattle, there's guys all in between. So as far as getting somebody that people can rally around, Raiders are not going to have any kind of issue there. They have quickly done some things to transform their identity in this serious reboot that we talk about, depending on how you count. Maybe the Raiders 3.0, maybe 4.0, depending on how many versions you want to count. The point is, this is a really significant one, and this is the cornerstone deal to get it launched in 25.
I agree with you. All right, I want to go to the tush push. We're going to come back to the Raiders in a minute. But as you know, I'm not one that says I can't beat you. Let's legislate it. And there have been no injuries with the tush push. I understand why some people don't like it. They say, well, you can't stack the defense. Why should you be able to stack the offense? Okay, I hear all of that. And I told everyone before the owners' meetings that, listen, nobody I know supports getting rid of the tush push. And then a couple days before, I had to report that there were a couple of very powerful owners, primarily teams that can't beat the Eagles, that were pushing to get rid of it, and that there were some people that thought it may get banned at the owners' meetings just because of the powerful owners behind it. There was so much talk at the owners' meeting, John, about it. Oh my gosh. And those powerful owners in the NFL usually get their way. But instead, the tush push got pushed to May. Now, I still think it's going to be altered because the way the NFL is structured, powerful owners usually get their way, but people don't. I'm telling you, people don't want it to pass unless they can't beat the Eagles. I'd love your thoughts on this push of the tush push.
I got to hear Pete Carroll from those owners' meetings. Of course, plenty of coverage that everybody's been there. You were right there as well. Pete Carroll says, "Hey, this is not a dangerous play based on the data so far. I don't even see anything there." And it feels like that's really the main side of the argument that hey, there's no data to support that this is a really dangerous play yet. We do understand from the other side of the pond when you're talking about rugby, you're talking about when they're in one of those scrums and it breaks down, like they stop the play right away. Well, they're in different equipment, and it's certainly something to be aware of. It is wild that this became such a big deal. I do think it's interesting that you take a team like the Eagles, who are the most interested in this. You take a team like the Raiders, who are really not, and they come along the same line saying, "Hey, man, there's really not any data here to support this is not a safe play." I do think there's room for revision, like we talked about, maybe limiting the amount of hands that can be pushing on any player, any part of the field at a time. I think I saw a quote or two kind of talking about that this week, and maybe that's where this is headed. It's not a very long time between now and May. It'll be interesting to see if anything happens, but maybe some clarification on the rule is not a bad idea. It's better for the sport, and it also doesn't take away what has been an effective play that some of us continue to think should be used on early downs, especially when teams aren't running the ball well. Go ahead and get a little push going. Interesting to
You
see.
know, another thing I wanted to talk to you about is the Bears made a $19 million gamble on Arlington Heights. I think this was a smart move on their part,
Well,
hedging their bets. And
yeah.
that's what billionaires do. Billionaires hedge with millions, millionaires hedge with hundreds of thousands. And the smart move, your thoughts?
The Bears $197 million purchase in Arlington Heights, Illinois. That's like the biggest hedge of all time. So this is now spinning a little bit. We've been following this story from the Bears saying, hey, we want to build in the same place or we want to build maybe a little further south. Now Kevin Warren saying, hey, we've got to get this Arlington Heights thing moving too because we're not seeing what we want to see. There is the old movie dream way of doing business in Chicago. And then I'm sure there's the reality of whatever it is today. The point is, the Bears are really well positioned. You want to talk about a hedge, $197 million hedge, even assuming they've got some kind of a mortgage on it, it's pretty significant. They're going to do, I'm pretty confident they're going to do something with that property. That 197, they're going to do something with it. The city of Chicago probably needs to act pretty quickly and pretty smart if they're going to want if they're going to want to keep the Bears in the city. I don't. I think maybe some of us outside of this have underestimated the Bears Arlington Heights piece, if you will, in this poker game. Let's see what the next move is made. I think the next move is probably for the city of Chicago. They need to move because the Bears are saying, "Look, we've got to move this ball rolling." You've got interesting stadium things in Chicago and interesting things in Washington to watch here during these summer months.
I'll tell you, one of the things talked about at the owners' meetings was how the Raiders so seamlessly handled their stadium issues, and everyone else seems to be going through issues. Hey, let's talk about this shaky franchise that is the Falcons. Arthur Blank and ownership have made an interesting type of feeling here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
My thoughts are when you see Arthur Blank, you see an image of calm stability. That's the image that he's portrayed since he came in the NFL. It's the way he talks, that's the way he is. That doesn't necessarily mean that his organization is run in a calm and stable way. It has been run well at times. It's not being run too well right now, as we know. Coming off the debacle of the offseason last year and the scene in the draft room where it looked like Arthur Blank was going to fire his general manager right there, he's on record again this week, basically saying that he wasn't real happy with the coach and the GM with what happened last year, and he's got a lot of reason not to be happy, despite what they did, over investing or whatever you want to call it with a quarterback position. Then they apparently don't know that their quarterback is hurt when everybody else around him knows he's hurt. They really falter in the end. This is setting up for a real challenge for both the GM and the head coach in Atlanta. You don't like this if you're either one of them because they're almost getting set up. If things don't go the Falcons' way this year, I'm not sure the Falcons GM and coach will make it through the calendar year ending in 2025. They may be gone before the end of the season. They got a lot of eggs in some strange places as far as the baskets go, and it's so expensive to either lose your to burn a first round pick in the top 10 or burn that kind of contract dollar. When you do both, man, it's such a fine line in the NFL. You're asking for trouble. So Blank has basically said, hey, I like it stable, but I've told these guys I wasn't happy with what happened last year. I take that to mean they're in some trouble if things don't go their way this fall.
John, I want to talk to you about 26 free agents and a reshaping of a draft board. This is a fascinating concept.
How many teams are looking at who may be available in the next free agency cycle when they're considering who to draft? Now, we're not talking necessarily about Micah Parsons. We're not necessarily talking about superstars that are probably going to be locked up, although maybe they're not. We're talking about the other guys. So if you're rebuilding like the Raiders are, and typically at the NFL level, everybody wants to rebuild in 1 year if they can, but I think it's reasonable to believe that a rebuild, a significant systematic rebuild, almost completely restructuring and flipping your roster may take 2 or 3 years. So are teams like the Patriots already looking at who do we have this year? Who are we going to draft? And who might we do they already peek ahead a little bit into who might be coming up as a free agent next year? I don't imagine this is done broadly, but if you look at a list of the top free agents that are coming up for next year, you ask yourself, is it possible that some teams are already considering who's coming up next year? And they consider, okay, we have a position of need. We have a patchwork this year. We have a guy in the last year of his contract. Maybe we're going to go ahead and consider drafting if we like something this year, or plan to draft and or sign one of these free agents next year. It's easy to get caught up into this year's free agency. It is now, but I wonder how many of the teams at the organizational level are looking and considering who is going to be a free agent next year, and how does that maybe shape what we do with some of the draft picks we've got in April.
They're absolutely looking at it. And then they're looking at, are do any of these guys we have relationship with, so we know they would want to come here? And they're looking at next year's draft class. That in itself is really big. I'm hearing about some teams that may not take a quarterback this year, who are bad drafting teams that everybody thought was going to, because even they're smart enough to look ahead to next year and see what's on the radar. All right, scheduling lists. Let's talk about that.
Well, what we have now is your schedule lists are out as far as who's playing who for next year. It's not the actual schedule itself. And my initial impression from the Raiders are probably similar to a lot of folks that saw it. I look at their road schedule, it doesn't look very easy to me. They've got a lot of serious playoff teams in there. They got to go to the
Mhm.
Commanders. They got to go to the Eagles. Other than that Colts game, I don't see any kind of easy operation when you're talking about the road schedule. Now, it's the NFL. Almost all the games should be hard. We know that, and there's some difficulty predicting how good teams are going to be. But if you look at the Raiders' schedule right now and you look at who they've got to play on the road, it looks to me like they may play every single team on that schedule, except for maybe one, is probably going to make the playoffs this year. So if Pete Carroll and company were looking for maybe a somewhat easier schedule setup as we sit here in April, to me, it looks hard, especially on the road. And I mean, come on, you got Houston, Philadelphia, and Washington. That's hands full for Patrick Graham and company. It's not going to be easy in year one.
I agree with you. John, I want to talk to you about something else. At the owners' meeting, the number one name talked about was Arch Manning, excuse me, not Miller,
Yeah.
Manning. People wanted to talk about Arch Manning, and they say he's got the brain of Peyton. He's got the personality of Eli, meaning everybody just loves him and enjoys him, but like neither of them, athleticism. And I've had scouts bragging to me about how impressed they are with Quinn Ewers, that he mentally handled the pressure of having that guy behind him. They thought his stock rose because of that. but everybody just seems to be waiting. Like I had someone say this to me the other day. We haven't seen this kind of hype for a guy since Trevor Lawrence. I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, a couple thoughts. First of all, when you think about yours, to me, you're thinking about this guy. I don't even know that he had a college career. To me, it was a professional career when he started with his trip to Ohio State, and he's pretty much been operating as a professional since. I'm not saying his play level, but he's been in a contracted position
Mhm.
from day one. So yours is a little bit different. He's going to be looked back at as the first real NIL era quarterback that came in with it and did the whole thing. Now, for Manning, I think a couple things. Love the fact that he's getting real serious NFL training in terms of his coaching and development at the University of Texas, just at his day job. Off the field, he's got plenty of access to some pretty good minds, I'm sure, that are contributing to him in a reasonable way that he can also access in his family, which is fantastic. That stuff's fantastic. How many reps does he need before he's ready to take over as a starter at the NFL level? That would be the most interesting thing to me if I was trying to scout him, would be understanding from Texas, understanding from Steve Sarkisian. Is this guy ready to get us from the end of a play to the next snap? Because there's so much work that an NFL quarterback has to do in there. And if that is in fact the case, then the level of hype surrounding Arch Manning should absolutely be as high as we've seen since Lawrence, and that probably the one before that, my guess would be Andrew Luck. That's the kind of stuff you're talking about. So the excitement level for people that may be drafting in the top 5 or think they may be drafting in the top 10 next year is probably pretty high. But I would like to see a couple of things. I'd like to see more reps out of Arch Manning, and I need to see physically how he measures up. I'm always
Yeah.
concerned about size, and I know this guy is young, so we don't know exactly how big he's going to be yet. We see his bloodlines. It should look pretty good. But you're talking about like a 5-tool quarterback, if there ever was one. If you were looking at all the things you could do to try to groom a guy, this guy has pretty much all of it. I want to see a few more reps and get a feel for if he's absolutely ready to handle all that there is to be an NFL quarterback. It's no surprise that there are a lot of eyes and a lot of excitement and anticipation, and maybe some people thinking maybe we ought to try to find a way to position ourselves to try to take our shot at getting this guy because he may be the next big, 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 big drafted quarterback to pop.
I'm telling you, people that I trust in the NFL could not stop talking about Arch Manning at the owners' meetings. I thought that was really fascinating, and
Yeah.
that guy's going to be special. And I disagree when you said maybe Andrew Luck because Andrew didn't have that kind of hype before he was a starter. The
Oh,
only
that's
guy
true.
we've saw-
Yeah, yeah,
the only guy we've seen with this much hype before he was a starter was Trevor. But I mean, let's face it, coming out,
yeah,
Andrew had all the hype. But
absolutely.
yeah. All right. Hey, I appreciate you. I got to tell you quick. Shannon told me we got to get you and Alicia down here with us next time we come to Cabo. So we got to try to plan that. Okay.
We should. We shall indeed.
All right, buddy. Great to see you. John, tell everybody where they can find you on social media, will you?
I am at JP Spartan, whether I'm at the beach, in the mountains, or just in the city of Atlanta.
Thanks,